Hey everyone, welcome back to Firsthand Globetrotting. My Canadian vacation is still going strong, and in this video I'll tell you about my next stop, Moncton, New Brunswick. I'm guessing that a lot of you won't know much about Moncton. You may never have heard of it. It's a pretty small city in the Canadian Maritimes and isn't on many people's travel radar. But some of the things in and around Moncton seemed really cool, so I definitely wanted to stop by. I went into Moncton just long enough to check into my hotel and drop my bags. After that, I was on the road making a 40-minute drive out to Hopewell Rocks. This is a really cool spot and one of the main reasons I wanted to visit Moncton. When you get there, there are some short hiking trails you can walk along that take you to a few different scenic lookouts. They give you a great view of the coastline, the Bay of Fundy, and the rock formations down below. The Bay of Fundy has the highest tides in the world, and the rock formations were formed by tidal erosion over the years. So it's really cool seeing all the different rocks sticking out of the water. Some of them have really narrow bases and big tops, so they look like they're nearly ready to tip over. But remember I said the Bay of Fundy has the highest tides in the world? Today I was there to see Hopewell Rocks at high tide. Make sure you remember what I'm showing you now, because tomorrow things are going to be a lot different. After exploring the rocks at high tide, I had a quick dinner and a pretty early night. The next morning I was up bright and early and headed back to Hopewell Rocks for low tide. Do you see the difference? The water is hundreds and hundreds of feet from where it was last night. The tide change is so much bigger and more impressive than anything I've seen before. Most of the time when you're at a beach, the tide moves the water a few dozen feet, but this was on a completely different level. It's really something you have to see to believe. But it's even better when you go back and take another look at the rocks. Yesterday they were all sticking out of the water, but today the tide is pushed back, so they're all just sitting there on the beach. And even better, at low tide they open up a big staircase so you can go down and walk right up to the rocks. All of the scenic viewpoints were nice, but getting to walk along the beach and through the rocks was by far the best part. You can walk right up to all the rock formations and see the unique shapes that the tides have formed them into. Some of them are called the flower pot rocks, and you can see where they get the name. There's the thicker flower pot part that's usually underwater, the thin flower stems, and then the thicker flowers up top that even have some plants growing on them. It was so cool to get to see them up close. I had a blast just wandering around on the beach, looking at the rugged coastline and rock formations, and just being completely blown away with the natural beauty of Hopewell Rocks. The parts further away from the water are pretty dry and compact since they've had time to dry. But if you're a little more adventurous, the area closer to the water gets really muddy. They have water hoses to clean yourself off after, but make sure you wear clothes and shoes that can get dirty. There are also little seaweed-covered rocks you can walk along as you look back at the rock formations and coastline. If you stay out exploring for too long, the tide is going to eventually come back in and you could get trapped out there. But if you can't make it back to the main staircase, they have these little safety platforms that you can climb up and hide out on. Overall, it was a really cool experience seeing Hopewell Rocks, and I'm so glad I got to see it at both high and low tide. But I wasn't done with the Bay of Fundy tides yet. I headed back to Moncton to visit View Park. The park has a little seating area where you can see the river and check out another natural wonder, the Tidal Bore. Most of the time the river is pretty calm and uneventful, but when the tide from the Bay of Fundy comes in, a wave starts making its way up the river against the normal flow of the water. From View Park you can see the wave coming around the corner and slowly making its way along the river until it passes right by. It's pretty incredible to see the wave marching its way towards you like a slow-moving wall of water. Just like with the Hopewell Rocks tides, they post the times when the Tidal Bore wave is expected to come into town each day, so you can make sure you're there to see it in person. But because it's a natural phenomenon, the timing isn't exact. When I saw it, the wave was about 5 or 10 minutes earlier than expected. So make sure to show up ahead of schedule so you don't miss it. After seeing the Tidal Bore, I spent the rest of the day exploring downtown Moncton. It's not a huge city, so the downtown area is mostly contained along a few blocks of Main Street. I mainly noticed bars and restaurants there and a few other stores. Remember how I said Moncton wasn't really on too many people's travel radar? I don't think I saw a single tourist shop in the entire downtown area. Kind of refreshing since so many cities I visit have their downtowns completely geared towards tourists. But when I woke up on day 3, I went to Moncton's most touristy spot, Magnetic Hill. When you pull up to Magnetic Hill, it looks like there's a little dip in the road. You drive down to the bottom of the dip, put your car in neutral, and take your foot off the brake. So you'd expect, since the road slopes up in both directions, that you just stay still, right? Nope, that's when the magic of Magnetic Hill starts happening. You start rolling backwards up the hill, and you actually get going pretty fast. It's a really weird experience and almost seems like your car has a mind of its own. As the story goes, the hill is magnetic and pulls the metal in your car back up to the top. But, as you probably guessed, there aren't actually magnets pulling you up. It's an optical illusion that makes you think you're at the bottom of a dip in the road, but the dip isn't really a dip at all. It's higher up, so your car is actually rolling downhill. It made for some quick fun and was something that's pretty cool to see with your own eyes. After that, I stopped by the Magnetic Hill Wharf Village. It's a recreation of a traditional maritime fishing village and has all sorts of souvenir shops and restaurants there. As you can probably see, it's super touristy and it's made so tourists have a nice photo stop. But I have a soft spot in my heart for tourist traps, so I made sure to stop by and visit the giant lobster. Magnetic Hill also has a zoo and a water park, but unfortunately I didn't have time for them. I was in Moncton less than 48 hours and it was already time to leave and head to my next stop. Moncton was actually a really fun place and I'm really happy I visited. Just getting to see the incredible tides of the Bay of Fundy made the trip completely worth it. My Canada trip has one more stop left, so make sure to subscribe to my channel so you can follow along. And if you want to see the earlier stops on my trip, Ottawa and Montreal, the links are in the video description. While you're at it, make sure to like the video and share it with your friends. On Instagram, I'm Firsthand Globetrotting. On Twitter, I'm Firsthand Globe. Follow me on there. And don't forget, it's an incredible world out there, so pick up your passport and do some firsthand globetrotting of your own.